So we did our project on Salmon Creek, and we did a index of biotic integrity for the Lake Ontario watershed.
For some background information on Salmon Creek, it flows north across western Monroe County into Lake Ontario. It's largely surrounded by agricultural land. It crosses through Hilton. Recreational fishing is common in this stream, and a nature reserve was established in 2022. For some watershed info, it's estimated 25% of the watershed is deciduous forest, 25% is cultivated crops, and around 18% is pasture. The average stream slope is 1.4%, which is around medium.
So here we have a visual representation of the land usage within the watershed. As you can see, based on the graphic, the primary land use coverage is cultivated crops and hay pasture. And I think it's interesting to point out that as you follow the main flow path of Salmon Creek into Braddock Bay, the proximity of cultivated crops and hay pastures, they get closer to the actual stream banks, possibly accounting for the nutrient deposition within the bay. And this is just another graphic to show the land usage within the watershed. We have percentage plotted on the x-axis, and on the y-axis we have just the various land uses within cultivated crops. You can see you're just below 25%, and deciduous forest is just below 25 as well, at roughly 23%.
So here we have Braddock Bay, which is the mouth of Salmon Creek. It is designed as a designated wildlife management zone. It's surrounded by Lake Ontario to the east, the urban areas to the north and south. And the shoreline is continuing to recede over the last 100 years or so, as you can see with those lines on the right side. It has a barrier beach just north of that southern shore. With the importance of IBI, it is also known as the Index of Biotic Integrity, the cost-effective techniques, and is quick and reliable, as noted by Barber. It's used to measure the health of the stream. There are set values for each family and for the species. These values determine the health of the stream. The low values equal a healthier stream, and the values are calculated by taking abundance of which organisms are present.
So our study site was located in Hilton, New York, at the Jenny John Lodge near Quest Elementary. And you can see here where the point is located, it's pretty much where our transect was located. For this survey, we did a 100-meter transect where we collected various factors, which we'll get to later on. But in this figure, it's important to note that to the west, or the east of the stream, there is residential areas. And then to the west is a mowed field, which looks like it used to be an old baseball field at one point.
So to collect our macroinvertebrates along this 100-meter transect, we performed 20 kicks using D-nets. We kicked 1 meter in front of the D-net. We chose these spots randomly throughout the transect, and we collected everything that was in the D-net. We stored them in ethanol and identified them the following week. Using microscopes and dichotomous keys, we identified down the family and we assigned them tolerance values.
So the methods that we used for the stream discharge and chemistry, along the 3 transects of the 50-meter section of Salmon Creek, we collected the stream width, velocity, and depth at the point of measurement with the vernier probe. We collected pH, temperature, conductivity, and dissolved oxygen along the 3 transects, also using the vernier probe. After that, a sample of the sediment composition was collected and measured using a micrometer. For the sediment composition, it was a pebble count. Within the total transect, it was started at one section of the transect, and during a zigzag path, every right step was a pebble was randomly selected. After 100 pebbles were collected, they were measured with analog calipers along the z-axis, which is the width.
So for our IBI sampling, for our macroinvertebrates, we completed 3 indices for our collections. The first was a modified family biotic index, which And then we also used an EPT index, which was Ephemerata, Plecoptera, and Trichoptera, which measures mayflies, stoneflies, and caddisflies. And then we also used the Shannon-Weiner index to calculate diversity. So for our family biotic index, we had a value that came out to be 5.34, which according to the Hilsenhoff FBI table indicates a water quality range of about fair. So that fair range is the pollution, so there's not a lot of pollution, there's not too much pollution, so it's pretty much right in the middle. For water quality, for our EPT index, so this is the abundance of mayflies, stoneflies, and trichopteras divided by the total number of insects caught multiplied by 100, and our value for that was 31.94, which according to the Natural Resource Conservation Service indicates an excellent water quality. And then for our Shannon-Weiner index, we had a value that came out to be 2.49, and that is also, that scales out of 5, so that value kind of correlates with the family biotic index of about, an even amount of diversity for this stream.
So in our collection, we identified a total of 21 different families. Our total count was 144, and some of the most common families were Hydrocycidae, Chironomidae, and Spheridae.
We also calculated our discharge, which came out to be 2.47 meters cubed per second. And this is a high discharge for this creek. And it was potentially due to the heavy rain prior to our IBI sampling. However, it's very difficult to compare this discharge to past years because the U.S. Geological Survey does not have a gauge on this stream. However, the flow, the high flow, was also recorded on Sandy Creek, which does have a USGS gauge. And Sandy Creek at that time also had high rain flows, and that correlated with the gauge with high stream discharge. And our results for water chemistry, it shows great similarity between the middle and upstream portions. However, the downstream portion is slightly different than the other two. So as you can see in our figure 1, the change in pH values from the downstream transect to the upstream transect, you can see our 100 meter transect. The downstream portion is about in between 1.5 and 1.6, and our middle and upstream portion is at over 8.7. On the right graph here in figure 2, you can see the change in water temperature from our downstream to upstream transects. Water temperature at the downstream was about 13.1, and as you move into the upstream section, it rose to 13.3. So again, not a huge difference in the temperatures, but there is a steady increase from the downstream to the upstream. Our dissolved oxygen values from the transects. Dissolved oxygen at the downstream was about 12.44, which is kind of the tail end of this riffle. And then as you get into the upstream portion, in the middle and upstream portion, it went to 12.47, which at that point we're getting more into the riffles, which might indicate a higher dissolved oxygen value. And finally, for figure 4, our conductivity also increased from the downstream to upstream portion. So as you can see in our downstream portion, it was about 1190, and our middle and upstream transects were about between 1215 and 1220 microsiemens per centimeter.
So we also did electrofishing at a later date in Salmon Creek, and the fish that we found are lining up with the indications that we saw with the stream health. We had our healthier stream fish, which would be our shiners and our darters. We had our middle of the road fish, being our bass and smallmouth and panfish, and then some of our dirtier stream fish, the common carp, brown bullhead, and northern codfish sucker.
This is a graph of our pebble count or sediment composition. We had a smaller size for the sediment composition. Typically, everything was within 1 millimeter to upwards of 150, but everything was below 550 for our size.
The references. Thank you.